The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Welcome back to It's Just Coffee, and welcome back to our World of Coffee Dubai special. You've already heard some of the amazing conversations we've had, like our chat with Wilfred Lemastis Jr., the farmer behind the world's most expensive coffee. And we chatted with the World Barista Champion, Mikhail Jasin, but we're just getting started. For the next 2 weeks, we're doubling down, double the caffeine, double the podcast. We're dropping 4 new episodes each week, Tuesday to Friday. More deep dives, more behind-the-scenes moments, and more of the world's best coffee minds, all straight from Dubai. So grab a coffee, settle in, and get ready for another episode of It's Just Coffee. Enjoy the show.
I'm good. I'm Gucci. Snapping on or? All right, welcome back to the It's Just Coffee podcast. You got to say it. Welcome back to the
It's Just Coffee
podcast. I'm Kirk Pearson, joined again by I had a podcast before I did this one, and you are now my most interviewed guest of all time, Simon Gautherin. Welcome back to the show.
Well, I'm blushing. It makes me very happy to hear that.
You're living in Australia now, French native. We've been traveling here together for about a week now, so I've been spending a lot of time with you and your partner Camille. What are your impressions of Dubai so far? We'll start with this because I kind of feel like Australia's going backwards with progress in the coffee industry, and I don't say there's a nasty thing. I mean it in the most constructive way. Whereas this place and the countries around it are just excelling. Agree?
Yeah.
Disagree?
You can tell it's skyrocketing here. I feel like this city never sleeps. Actually, I mean, Dubai is super busy all the time. Cafes are busy as well, and they're open until midnight, 1 a.m. Yeah. Whereas in Australia, I feel like when I first arrived to Australia 9 years ago, cafes used to shut at 5 p.m. and then now it's like 2 p.m. for most cafes.
Yeah,
so.
Well, and that's something I feel like there's so much opportunity for back in Australia right now. So I've got a cafe myself. It's in kind of the business end of town, so foot traffic's not that high there in the evening. But if I have something that's more central in some of the tourist areas, one of the best things you can do if you're listening to this podcast right now here, in Australia or maybe even Canada, wherever you're from, try opening your cafe late at night until the evening and see who you attract.
You know what? You got a good point, because I remember when I first arrived, I saw all these cafes closing at 4 or 5 p.m., but then the local Starbucks in Sydney CBD would be packed up until like 8, 9 p.m. And then you're thinking, well, yeah, there's definitely like some people who like to go to cafes in the evening. Of course, in Australia, maybe it's not as many as it is here, but you definitely have some people who actually want to hang out somewhere.
What are they playing over there? Some Mexican music. We'll push through it. But yeah, the cafe culture here is obviously good. I think as well, people are so open to buying world-class coffee.
Yeah, people have appreciation for good things, I think, and they're not afraid to spend money for good things. And they're not... I think people are very enthusiastic about new coffees, new varieties, new origins, and there's no skepticism, I think, in general with good things. Whereas I feel like in other parts of the world, I mean, and I'm French myself, and I think we're very good at being skeptical in France. Usually, when you see something expensive, you might be thinking, "Oh, this is a ripoff," or "Is it really worth it?" And I feel like here they really embrace these things, and that's why you have a culture of excellence. You have a culture of let's make the best possible coffee, which is why, I mean, I've had so many outstanding coffees in the last 7 days.
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I have got to go around to a lot of good places to eat and drink. I've mentioned on the podcast a bunch of times now our trip out to Sharjah and going to Benchmark Coffee.
Benchmark, yes.
Best cinnamon scroll I've ever had. Some of the best coffee I've ever had.
Some of the best croissants I've ever had.
Some of the best croissants.
From a Frenchman.
Bakery. What's that place called? BKRY?
BKRY, yeah. I mean, outstanding. And again, like, seeing those, they would be the equivalent to like almost $10 for a croissant, or like $8 to $10, which is like on the pricier side, right? And how long did we queue for that place? Like 40 something minutes?
45 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, and it shows that people are willing to pay extra for stuff that are absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and that's probably a good point going forward for people listening to this podcast anywhere in the world, right? There's never been a more important time in coffee's history for like the sustainability of it, whereas if you deliver a quality product and if you're fearful of prices and things like that going up in the future, legitimate concern. But if you're offering a quality product, just consistently delivering, I really don't think you've got a problem. Like price increases are something that's the whole world's experiencing. I mean, if you're doing that, would you agree?
No, you've got a good point, I think. And if you look in general in the wider business, in hospitality, but also in other industries, you never really see good businesses shut down. I mean, you never see an amazing restaurant shut down, or sometimes if it does, it could be for management reasons, locations, and that sort of stuff. But restaurants that do a good job, or cafes that serve amazing coffee, great food, good service, they don't shut down, they just do really well. And now, as you said, now maybe more than ever, quality is paramount.
Yeah, it's the most, price is important too, but I think people look for quality, especially if you're going to spend your hard-earned money. You want to make sure it's well spent.
And people are maybe not as price sensitive as we think they are. And
I agree.
There's this, of course, the average purchasing power around the world is maybe decreasing. In some areas, maybe it's increasing. But in general, in Australia, we're sort of seeing this sort of like consumption crisis where people are struggling a little bit more to make ends meet. Real estate is crazy expensive and everything. But at the same time, you've never had that many rich people. Like the inequalities are, like the gap is widening. And you have people who actually have money to spend. So you can still make a really good business selling, really premium stuff, I think. And people are maybe not necessarily as price conscious, or some people are not as price conscious as you may think.
I think it's just got to, so long as they're getting value, so long as everyone's winning the transaction, whoever's buying the coffee, whoever's making the coffee, whoever's supplying the coffee, as long as everyone's winning the transaction, no problemo.
Yeah.
You're the waterman. I think you're widely gaining that accreditation across the world. We had a reel go semi-viral recently where Rowan basically just inflamed the whole country of Australia, trashing
Tasmania.
Tasmania especially. But he actually raised a really good point where some of the best coffee generally, and you've been really influential in this space, it needs good water to be good. And, let me give you an example. If you're going to go and make an espresso that's 90% water, more than 90% water, and you're using water from your dishwasher, that dirty dishes, do you think that's going to taste good?
Well, that's a very good that's a very good point. Like, sometimes I see people use water to brew coffee, and I ask the question, would you drink that water? And they're like, oh, no, it's a bit dirty. It's coming from my machine. I haven't cleaned my machine. And I'm like, well, you're actually drinking that water, or you're serving that water to your customers.
Yeah.
So I usually, I like to be a bit provocative and then tell people that water is actually more important than coffee, because you end up having more water than dissolved coffee solids into your brew.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty easily debatable point, like in the sense, I think you've got a good case.
Yeah, but what I can say is you can't make good coffee with bad water. And obviously you can't make good coffee with good coffee. And you have two ingredients that you're using to make coffee. It's a very simple recipe: coffee, beans, and water. If either of these two is not good, you can't brew a final good result, pretty much.
One thing that popped up in the comments section of that post is like, why isn't it as easy as just putting any filter on your coffee, like your water supply to your coffee machine in different parts of the world? Why can't you just do that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So, couple things, but essentially drinking water gets treated differently in different parts of the world, and it's all about the input of water that you get. So where your base water comes from, and the dirtier the base water is, the harder it is going to be to treat that water. In some places it can be very costly to treat water. Water treatment is a very costly process. If you have a big city as well, it can be very challenging to process and treat as much water, and that's affecting the quality of the water. Then you have cities where the pipes into which the water travels can be old, and they can be a bit dirty as well. And you'll have solids that dissolve into that water and sort of like taint it along the way as the water travels from the purification center up until our taps, pretty much. And it's not as easy as like you put a filter and then you go from bad water to good water. It's not like a binary system.
Yeah, well, let's outline a bit of the detail on that. So we're in Dubai right now, the UAE, where a lot of the water supply here is treated by desalination. So it's actually seawater that's had some of the salt removed so that it can be used for general use. So we've had some discussions with some of the locals here that have coffee shops, and water can be the parts per million count, let's just say. In Melbourne, it might be 30 parts per million?
In Melbourne, you'd be at 30, so which means 30 milligrams of dissolved minerals per liter of water.
Yeah, and then you put it somewhere in Dubai where it's as hard as like 600 parts per million.
I've heard 6 to 900 sometimes.
6 to 900. So if you put it in that context, the way a water filter works, you don't just get water from your supply, it goes through a filter and it magically comes out the right specifications for brewing. So a lot of people use reverse osmosis, but even that has its limitations because you have to filter things out of the water. And if it's as hard as 600 parts per million, then it's quite a challenge.
Yeah, you're starting to see a few new companies now that manage to do reverse osmosis, so essentially strip everything from the water without wasting too much water. So usually the way reverse osmosis works is in order to remove everything from the water, it has to go onto another part of the water. So you're actually wasting a lot of water. But there's new companies that are doing a really good job at filtering all of the minerals from the water. But you have another issue with reverse osmosis because let's say even if you manage to remove all of the minerals from your water, which is maybe challenging for a country like the UAE, you still need minerals in your water or your coffee. You still need to be able to have minerals so that you can highlight the flavors of your coffee. I mean, drinking water that has no minerals is actually not a very safe thing. Like we need like magnesium, we need calcium. These are all essential minerals for our body to function. So you need to somehow put the minerals back into your water, and that's a lot more technical and not as easy as people think it is. And that's currently the biggest challenge, I would say.
Yeah, well, and let's put the example of my shop in there because we had the problem in Melbourne where it's actually the water's too soft. So, like, you might think, 30 parts per million, that's great. Not exactly. You need, like you said, some of the minerals are essential for our health, but also, the coffee experience. And one interesting thing I've learned from you in this trip is that the extraction process is actually not influenced by the content of the water.
I would say, I wouldn't say it's not influenced, but I would say the impact that minerals have on the extraction process is a lot more minimal than people think it is. And just to give it a bit of context, for a long time in the specialty coffee industry, we were taught and we thought that minerals were essential for the extraction process. As if they had this like super magical power to sort of like pull stuff out of coffee and dissolve that into water. And what is, a very easy test to do is to brew coffee with demineralized water, so water that has no minerals, and to brew coffee with water that has minerals, and you can measure how much stuff you've dissolved into coffee, so your TDS, the total dissolved solids, and you'll see that is zero difference, or maybe a small, tiny difference between the two, which means that your minerals don't actually extract stuff out of coffee.
So let's dumb that down for the listener. So we can actually test coffee now by the strength of coffee by a percentage using a refractive index or refractometer. So if you were to test one made with coffee, made with water that's 0 parts per million, made with one that's 50 to 100, the total dissolved solids count, the strength as a percentage will be the same.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So you wouldn't have more dissolve more coffee, or like very, very little, almost insignificant. And this basically shows that, but if you try the two coffees, though, they would taste very different because one has minerals and the other one doesn't. And it actually shows that the way minerals impact the way we perceive coffee's flavors, the way the coffee's tasting, is mainly by the way minerals sit on our taste receptors and the way they send basically signals to our brain, stimulating our senses. And essentially, there are certain minerals that will highlight the perception of acidity, others that will highlight the perception of sweetness, others that will highlight the perception of body. But then, for example, magnesium is a great example where magnesium does not change the pH of water. So pH is how we measure, there's a tangible measurement of the acidity of a liquid. When you add magnesium to your water, to your coffee, it doesn't increase or decrease the pH, it doesn't change it, but a coffee will feel much more acidic when you add magnesium. Because the way magnesium works is when it sits on your taste receptors, it will trick your brain to thinking, wow, this is really bright, this is really juicy and vibrant. And that's kind of like how we have been using minerals recently in order to sort of like trick the way we perceive flavors in coffee. So we're not adding any acid, we're not adding any sugar into coffee, but we can actually increase the sweetness or increase the perceived acidity just by knowing exactly which minerals to use.
And I totally subscribe to the belief now that water is a dial-in. It's as important as your grind size. It's as important as what recipe you're using. As important as the machinery and the equipment because it's fed into it. One thing I've been really captivated by the travel time that we've spent here together and kind of the talks that you've delivered. And with APAX, like it's such a explain to everyone who might not know you what your product is.
Yeah, so what we've done is I've studied the way different minerals impact the flavors of coffee for about 8 years. And I decided to basically put all that knowledge into little bottles, which is basically demineralized water with a lot of minerals into it. It's a highly concentrated solution where each different profile that we make and each different profile that we have does a very targeted job at highlighting different things in coffee. So we have a profile that will highlight brightness and juiciness in coffee, another profile that will highlight sweetness and roundness and creaminess and body into coffee. And we basically, with these different profiles, we're able to shift the way coffee tastes by adding minerals either to the brewing water or into the coffee directly. So it's like you said, instead of changing grind setting to get more body, now you can add minerals to that final cup.
Yeah. What are some of the best, people might be listening to this and I understand it's a very dense subject. What are some of the best resources that people can go to online, for example, to learn more about this?
So, it's one of these interesting topics where you can read a lot of stuff that are maybe a little bit outdated, I would say. And but more recently, I would say my friend Jonathan Gagné from Canada has written quite a lot about water. Maybe it might be a bit technical for a lot of people to understand, but his research is quite interesting. On our website, apaxlab.com, or on our Instagram at APAX Lab, we publish a lot of our research, but we try to do that in a very, very simple way. My ethos and my way of thinking is always, if I can't explain it to a 6-year-old, then it means that I don't understand it well enough. So,
and to be honest, I still, in my professional career, have in my infancy of learning about water as well. So, it's a very dense subject, and I think
it is. Yeah,
I hope, obviously, the work you're doing is great, but honestly, I would encourage you to do even more, as much as you can, because this is such an untapped space and such a misunderstood space. But that kind of excites me because there's
the future is bright,
The future's bright. If we nail this collectively, who knows how far we'll go with coffee.
Yeah, and even outside of coffee, we've touched on that briefly, but it works. Minerals have the same impact on other beverages like matcha, tea, liquors, mocktails, anything you want, even in food. So I think the future, you'll see a lot more minerals being used in cooking. You see more minerals being used in beverages as well.
Yeah, and some of the applications of your product are in things like beer as well, right?
Yeah.
So
I'll give you a very good example. We run a lot of workshops all around the country in Australia, but also around the world. And one of my favorite things to do is to bring a couple of cans of Coca-Cola or a couple of cans of soda, pour that into different cups or different glasses, and get people to add minerals into Coca-Cola. And you would be mind blown by how much better you can make Coca-Cola taste just by changing the mineral composition of it.
Right.
Because it's mainly water. It's mainly water, sugar, and acids, etc. But you can really transform a Coca-Cola and make it taste sweeter or more acidic based on what minerals you add into it.
I know you've only got a few minutes, one more minute before you got to go. What's one thing you want to say to the listener before you do depart?
I would say that if you want to make good coffee in your cafe, if you want to make good water in your cafe, you've got to use good water. And I've said that many times and I'll say it again, but it shouldn't even be a variable that you're looking into, such as your grind setting, etc. I think it should be a whole ingredient, the same as your coffee. So the amount of work that you put into looking for coffee and sourcing coffee and getting good coffee, you need to put that same amount of work into your water, basically.
All right. So on a scale, on the coffee dial-in hierarchy, where does water sit?
For me, it's coffee. The choice of coffee number 1, choice of water number 2, and then things like I would say grind setting 3rd, and then brew ratio 4, for example.
Really?
But I put water. Water is everything. Again, you've got 98% water into your filter coffee. And when we say water, I say mineral contents in that water. So I would say water is not even a variable anymore. I used to think it was the most important variable. Water is an ingredient. And you've got 2 ingredients, water and coffee. Of course, coffee comes first because you're brewing coffee. Water comes second. But it's an ingredient. It's not even a variable.
Well, there you go, folks. If you're at home or you're at a cafe, you can change your water supply today, the water you're using, and get better coffee. And I would really encourage you to do that. Don't just listen to this and forget about it. Change the water that you put in your coffee machine at home or you're brewing with. I would really encourage you to get some APAX. I use it at the cafe. We have it on display so people can season their coffee and things like that. But we're out of time now. Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you, Kirk,
for coming on.
Good to see you on the other side of the world.
Oh yeah, we're always bumping into each other everywhere. But thanks again to our sponsor, Eco Barista, who are sponsoring this podcast. www.ecobarista.com.au if you would like to get some products from them. 15% off your first order. They've supported us. It's been absolutely fantastic partnering with them. And as always, it's just coffee.
Done.
Love it.
All right. That's good.